Former President Donald Trump has returned to life as a businessman following his dumpster fire for presidency. And of course, it's no surprise to find out that those same businesses are also in a bit of a dumpster fire. So now it's almost as if he's got the reverse Midas touch. I've talked about that, where instead of turning things to gold, he turns everything into crap.
Big, massive dumps.
Okay. So anyway, financial disclosure forms show exactly how much crap he is walking back into, and it's not fun. Apparently, his hotels, resorts, and other properties have lost lots and lots of money as a result of the pandemic. In fact, those properties have lost more than $120 million in revenue last year as the pandemic has forced long-term closures and has kept customers home. So when you think about that, why do you think that he wanted to open up the country immediately and not do any lockdowns? Open it up. Doesn't matter. We got to keep this stuff open. Well, we all know the hospitality industry, which is what hotels are, generally, and restaurants as well, they've been hit really, really hard by this pandemic. Okay, there's no doubt about that. Now, had we had a good lockdown and had been able to, take the, mask wearing seriously and do everything that we needed to do when it comes to the pandemic, then we would actually be almost over the pandemic, basically. We would at least be able to open up halfway or quarter way, whatever, restaurants, and those losses wouldn't have been as severe. Okay? And yes, a lot of businesses have suffered as a result of the pandemic. Very, very true. And so now his losses ended up being worse in the places where Donald Trump could least afford it. For example, his Washington hotel, which has a $170 million loan outstanding, saw revenue drop about 60%. His Doral Resort in Miami, also carrying a huge debt load, a big load, saw a 44% drop. And on Thursday, one of its banks and one of its law firms said that they would also cut ties with the Trump organization. So now that's not a result of the pandemic. So there are legitimate issues when it comes to, hey man, look, we lost revenue because of the pandemic, because people aren't going to restaurants, because people have had to stay home. Totally understandable. But then there's also the self-inflicted stuff. That is the stuff where you cannot blame it on the pandemic, where you can blame it on the things that you have done. Massive dumps of revenue. Come on.
Big, massive dumps.
Okay. I got to get that out of my system. I got to get the big, massive dumps out. All right. Anyway. Serious story, guys. Serious story. All right. So, again, these other problems, they're the result of Trump basically being Trump. In fact, the Washington Post reports that these are just the latest in the string of vendors and customers who had severed their relationship with the company, with the Trump organization, after January 6th. That is, of course, the January 6th insurrection. These riots where these violent insurrectionists attacked the U.S. Capitol building and occupied it for a short time. And so this was after Trump had addressed them, incited them at a rally. So now Bert Eli, a banking consultant who has testified before Congress on financial matters, says this, quote, "He faces some very serious problems that have been building in recent years, and I think are going to come to a head now that he's left office." Overall, Donald Trump listed specific revenue figures for 47 of his different companies, including his golf clubs, hotels, and New York City park properties. Combined revenue at his companies declined more than 35% last year, according to a Washington Post analysis. Combined with the losses, Donald Trump faces more than $400 million in outstanding loans, including more than $290 million on Doral and DC hotels. So all that. Along with that, Trump's company has lost key partners, including other banks and lawyers that had stuck through him through the lowest points of Trump's political career. But of course, with Trump, you just had to keep going lower. Low wasn't bad enough. It's like a, what is it? I forget now, where there's this game where you have to go under the bar. You have to go under the bar. And he just keeps going lower. He just keeps going under that bar. And at some point, he went under the bar. Now, in fact, a spokesperson for Bank United, who's a Florida-based bank that just closed their accounts, quote, "We no longer have any depository relationship with him," meaning Trump. And by the way, that is where Trump had kept more than $5 million in money market accounts. On Thursday, Bank United said it was closing those, and it declined to say why, likely because, of course, he's toxic. His brand is toxic. The decision also meant that since the attack in the Capitol, Trump has lost 3 of the 4 banks that held his largest deposits, or dumps.
Dumps.
Okay, anyway, I know, I can't help myself. Signature Bank, a professional bank, cut their ties earlier this month. The 4th bank, Capital One, has declined to comment. Also Thursday, Trump had lost one of his best-known law firms, Morgan Lewis, which had represented Trump on tax issues since before he ran for office. So, all right. One Morgan Lewis partner, Sherry Dillon, had actually become a well-known defender of President Trump. But on Thursday, the firm said that relationship was also ending. "We have had a limited representation of the Trump Organization and Donald Trump in tax-related matters." This is somebody who had actually appeared alongside of Donald Trump during hearings. Quote, "For those matters not allegedly concluded, we are transitioning as appropriate to other counsel." Morgan Lewis spokeswoman Emily Carhart said in an email she declined to give a reason, but of course, we know the reason. Dillon was involved in the Trump Organization's handling of an estate called Seven Springs in suburban New York, where the company obtained a $21 million tax break through something called a conservation easement, essentially a promise not to develop some of that land in exchange for a tax benefit. Now Trump's dealings with Seven Springs are the focus of 2 state-level investigations by the Manhattan District Attorney and the New York Attorney General. Interesting. The decision by Morgan Lewis marked at least 2 law firms that have cut ties with Trump's company since January 6th. The first, Seifert Shaw, announced its decision last week. The third firm, Alston and Bird, also decided to end its relationship with Trump's company as well. In addition, and I've reported this before, Trump has lost 2 of its real estate brokers, its e-commerce vendor, and the chance to host the 2022 PGA Championship golf tournament. That is something that wounded Trump very, very personally. He took that very personally. He was very, very sad about it. Sad. And its hope of hosting another golf tournament, the British Open, even Turf Island is saying, nope, you are too toxic for us. Sorry. And New York City also said that it would end the Trump Organization's contracts to run a carousel, 2 ice rinks, and a golf course in city parks, contracts that brought the Trump Organization about $18 million back in 2019. Elsewhere, 2 major tenants in Trump's office building on Wall Street, the Girl Scouts of Greater New York and a tuberculosis fighting charity called the TB Alliance, said that they were seeking to leave the building. So they don't even want to be renting in Trump Tower anymore. Wow. You also had a triathlon event pull out of Trump's Charlotte golf course. In fact, Chuck McAllister, the founder of that event, which was expected to attract a decent number of athletes and over 1,000 spectators, said, quote, "It was all on track before the Capitol." But then McAllister had said that the Capitol attack caused sponsors and vendors to pull out, canceling the event, being the second time that event was canceled because another Trump, time where Trump couldn't put his foot, keep his foot out of his mouth. That was when, of course, Charlottesville happened. And afterwards, he called the people, the white supremacists, the Nazis on the Nazi side, quote, "very fine people." And of course, this guy, even after that, was like, I don't know, let's go back to Trump. And he got burned again. On that, McAllister said, quote, "It's deja vu. It's like Groundhog Day." Honestly, what did you expect? Trump's toxic. He's a toxic person. Why would you want to do business with him? He's ridiculous. In fact, here's what he also said. Quote, he was unsure whether or not he would come back in 2022. The name's toxic. It's toxic to some people. That's never going to change. Yup. I mean, look, here's the thing. Trump had actually a chance to do good things. I mean, he came upon a wave of like anti-establishment, populist rhetoric. Okay, I'm going to give you great health care. It's going to be a great plan. It's going to be the best plan. If the guy had adopted Medicare for all, I don't know. That would have made a big difference. That would have actually been him being like, wow, the guy actually is talking about Medicare for all. And of course, he didn't, because he wasn't interested in that. Because it turns out Trump is Trump, and he's just a nasty person. And so it ends up with him, doing things like the Muslim ban, locking children in cages, things like that. Which, by the way, I really hope the Biden administration hops on and gets, actually does something about that. That would be fantastic. Like tick, 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 those children aren't going to let themselves out. So Biden, do something. I'd appreciate that. And all the other stuff that he's done during his administration that was just absolutely awful, god awful. He didn't have to do that. He could have been a game changer. He could have actually been a populist, but he didn't do that. Nope. Instead, he did all the stuff that he had already done. He went full racist, xenophobic shitbag and fomented an insurrection to stay in power to boot. That's what happens. And at this point, by the way, some of that stuff, the pandemic stuff, was also self-inflicted by him not actually doing what he needed to do to control the pandemic. And so that would have actually helped his businesses as well to do a recovery. Instead, he didn't do any of that. So at this point, I really do believe that this guy is going to be forced into bankruptcy. And that's it. I mean, I feel it in my bones. Okay, this guy, months from now, maybe a year from now, super, super quiet, right? The guy's going to declare bankruptcy. We all know it. I mean, come on. And it's not only because he was a terrible president who made terrible decisions, right, for his businesses, but also the fact that he's just a terrible businessman. The guy's always operated in the red. This would be his 6th or 7th bankruptcy, something like that. I don't know, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, something like that. The guy's been bankrupt so many times. And again, being such a loser, terrible businessman who's going to go on to show once again to the world that he's always been a loser and will always be a loser. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.